Alright, so before you go ahead and put the oil pan on with the new gasket and everything, you're going to want to check how things work. I have this one-piece gasket here, just because it's going to match up to my timing cover a lot better than those cork rubber multi-gaskets, so we don't use those here. Alright, that can stay. Basically, when you have the drive gear, this was the tapered side, and you can tell it's the long portion that sticks out. So that always goes against the block, sits right on here, and usually it goes on this side of the cam right here, so that it's got the power going through the big gear, and then this one is just the one to take up the slack, pretty much the free play. So when you take this gear and drop it in, there we go. So yeah, when that's slotted in there like that, you're gonna have to grind down the backside of this piece right here, that long tapered cone part. Grind that down until you have really good gear contact, so that your idler gears are right in the middle of the contact path of your crank and cam gear. So these idler gears are actually the same thickness as the cam gear, which is a little thicker than the crank gear itself. So you do have some room to play with going back and forth, but the reason why you need to do that is so when you go to install your timing cover like this one, you just slot it in, set it up on the dowels. It needs to be nice and tight to the block, obviously, with your gasket in there. So I don't have the gasket on right now, that's fine, but I'm just doing this for fitting purposes. So this is the slot that you'll put some silicone in right here when it's all said and done. But you can see this gap here on this side. So this side's tight, this side is not. And when you tap it in, this side will start to come out a little. Now it's not a whole lot, and you have to remember when your gasket's in there, it's going to be a little different because you're going to make up, you know, a fraction of an inch. But you need 5 to 20 thou clearance between your gear. 5 to 20 thou clearance between your gear and the timing cover for any point of contact, which would be this button, the cam button for one, and for two is going to be these guys. Those are on bearings as well that allow it to keep the idler gears in place. So if you look here, right there, that little ring, that's where timing cover is contacting this, and that's why you have to grind down the backside to move it closer to the block. So I'm just going to take off a tiny bit more of this, and then I'll check again once I have the timing cover gasket and make sure that everything lines up and gives me enough clearance so that I don't have any contact between the idler and the button and the timing cover itself. I use the right stuff from Permatex, black, and just put a tiny skim layer all the way around, and you just push down in on the gasket and make sure that it gets all tacked up and aligns to all the bolt holes, and that way you won't have any slippage when you give it a couple minutes to set here before you go and put the timing cover on. Yeah, so I just started with the center. You can push in on the corners if you want, just to kind of figure out where center is. Just push these down in first, but then you're going to want to get this all down in the top section, and then just work it with your thumb down each direction until you have equal coverage on each side, and you'll see a little bit of that RTV squeeze out in the corners, and you can wipe that away after, but that's good for this. Toss some bolts into this. We'll move back here, toss a little RTV back in these corner wedges, and then slap the oil pan on as well. Alright, got the oil pan on and torqued down, and I got the timing cover on and torqued down. So with the timing cover, because this is aluminum and obviously iron block, so there's a gasket in there, and that'll help prevent any kind of corrosion between the two surfaces, the dissimilar metals. And same with here for each of these stainless bolts. They have a stainless lock washer sitting on top of a plastic washer, and that will separate the aluminum from the stainless so that there won't be any corrosion from dissimilar metals there as well. All of these are new fasteners, coated with oil on the threads for the oil pan and timing cover bolts as directed by the manufacturer. These are 12 foot-pounds and these are 6 foot-pounds. So everything is torqued, and I went over every bolt 3 times to make sure that all the bolts are completely torqued down and the gasket is squished evenly and equally all the way around. So that's pretty much it for these. Pretty simple, straightforward things. So we'll flip this over, install the lifters, get the rockers and the push rods all set up. As you can see, we got the intake installed here. I just finished torquing these down. They're just 30 foot-pounds into cast iron heads, so got all those torqued down evenly. Everything else is pretty much just set in place, not really any different. Got the water pump on and the crank harmonic balancer on as well. One thing that's really important to do with any kind of fresh rebuild, especially before a first start, is to prime the oil. You want to get the oil pressure built up, and you want to make sure that you have flow. You can do this right before you go to fire it up, right before you drop the distributor in, but it's probably a better bet to do it when you're only this far. You got the minimum amount of things on here. You got just a plug or a sensor popped in there so you don't have oil shooting out at you. But yeah, basically it's just to check and make sure that you do get oil through all of your lifters and all your rockers. If you can make sure of that, then you're pretty good position to go ahead and continue with the build. Got Wix oil filter on here. This is the best kind of filter for this particular engine. So basically you can go full tilt with this if you had like valve covers on here, but I don't, obviously. I want to watch. So you're gonna feel and you'll hear the oil pressure start to build up when you're just going slow with this. This here's just a Proform oil pump primer. Alright, just about to fire this. This is just a test run to show from a cold start. Can't hardly see that. 60 7 degrees Fahrenheit basically on the manifolds. Everything's cold. Yep, got fuel hooked up. There's no coolant, so I'm not going to run it for long. This is just to show that it's timed properly and that it will run. And compression's good.